first 3 weeks of January for us has been brutal as far as weather goes. And, we've seen a lot of school cancellations. What do school cancellations mean? Now your kids are at home. You can't go look at that house. You can't really concentrate on what you are going to do, move forward because things are changed. Or for me, like when it's cold like this, I don't even want to leave my house.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt. That is Shawn, and welcome to our show. Shawn, it is Wednesday, January 22nd. How is your chilly Wednesday treating you?
It's cold. Not a fan of the cold. Kids didn't go to school. They had a 2-hour delay again. Other than that, things are good.
So I got to tell you, I am mentally and physically exhausted from painting my primary bedroom. The wife's out of town. And you know what? My wife, who's currently pregnant, you know what she absolutely loves? What? She loves when I compare things to childbirth. She loves it,
Of course, yeah.
And so I told her, honey, painting is a lot like childbirth. And as she crossed her arms, she's like, go on. And I go, well, I'm sitting in the living room admiring this paint job. I painted the living room like a year ago, admiring my wonderful paint job. And I thought, I'll paint the bedroom. And then I was instantly reminded how stressful, painful, anxious, horrible painting actually is. I was in the room for hours. My arm aches. I was sweating. I was stressed. I didn't eat anything. I didn't drink anything. It was horrible. But I know I will sit back in my bed when it's eventually back in there, and I will be relieved that I painted.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, you always think that it's going to be easy, right? When I'm always like, I'm just going to go paint the room myself. It's easy. It'll be done like... It's a lot harder. Your wrists hurt, your hands hurt. You're like, what am I doing? Why not just hire a professional? He'll have it done like that. And I don't have to go through all this crap. So yeah, I could go either way. But lately I've just been like, hey, I'll pay you. Just come over and do this for me, please.
Yeah, I go in between paying someone and then doing it myself.
Sometimes it's fun,
sometimes it is fun, DIY, do it yourself, but then it takes like 4 times longer and actually costs more because the amount of like Home Depot runs. I just mentally prepared myself for multiple Home Depot runs.
And not only that, it's the attention to detail. As you start getting closer and closer to the end, you're like, all right, screw it. I'm just done. Like, whatever, right? And the professional painters, man, they stay with it.
One of the issues, though, is there were 30-year-old light fixtures in there. And so I wanted to remove them. Now is the perfect time. So you take them off. There's like 3 layers of paint. And so I had to kill the electric, okay?
Ooh,
now,
Matt.
the lights are still off, right? It's still off the wall. I got, like, wires sticking out and stuff. It's like, you don't want to touch anything or you're going to be on the ground.
3 months later.
Yeah. But that means I was like, man, Elaine would not know of anything until she comes back in, like, 4 days from now. But that means that other things don't have power.
Yeah.
And so the TV doesn't have power either. And so I sit down and I'm like, I took the batteries out of the remote. I was like, something's wrong with the remote. And the TV just didn't have power. But it means I can't watch this new show that just came out for season 2. Now, Shawn, you would hate the show. It's called Severance. You would hate it because it has a dramatic plot. It brings you to the edge of your seat. There are twists and turns. Mm-hmm. It's everything a good TV show would have. So naturally, you would dislike it
because
it's
causes
not
me
like,
anxiety.
It's not like unicorns and rainbows and cats. It has twists and turns and characters do interesting things. But it means I can't watch season 2 of Severance. So I was watching episode 1 before Elaine left for San Diego. And there had been like 3 years in between seasons. And so I was watching episode 1 and I was like, man, I kind of like forget some of these things. And so I watched a recap on YouTube of season 1 and it was like, here are 50 things you missed. And Shawn, I want to be honest, I missed like 45 of them. It's like, did you notice that the robe was blue and red? And then that signified this. I'm like, do these people just research these TV shows to come up with all these like interesting little tidbits and Easter eggs? Like, what other things? Like, I feel like I'm a person that notices like some things, but when it comes to TV shows, it's like, oh, did you notice the symbolism of, this key card. I was like, I had no idea what you people are talking about.
Yeah, and that's the thing is there's so many movies like that where, the first time I saw, I can't remember, it was Bruce Willis and this young kid and I See Dead People. Remember that movie?
Yeah,
I
The
See
Sixth
Dead People.
Sense.
The Sixth Sense. That was one of the first movies that I saw that I was like, oh my gosh, that's why everything's in like black and white everything when he's dead is in black or whatever it was.
Spoiler alert.
There was
Wow.
some significance to it, but it's those things that you don't know about in movies or you forget about, or maybe people just freaking make up. Who knows?
Yeah, and they started going down the theories of what the goats mean and what this means and what that
it's
means.
like, all
And I was
right.
like, I don't want to try to figure out the TV show while I'm watching. I just want to like absorb it and then be shocked at the ending.
And that's my problem. I enjoy watching and then I forget everything about it. So people are like, hey, did you see this movie? I'm like, I could have just watched it last week, but I wouldn't know the title because I didn't pay attention to the title. Or who's in the movie? I don't know because I don't know their names when I'm watching it. I'm just watching it.
But
right?
it's interesting. But you
it's
could
horrible.
name like the 1980s like Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line.
Yeah, right. Like I
know,
could. That's
it's like
because it
there
was
are something-
ingrained in
yeah.
me, right? Yeah. Anyways.
All right, Shawn, let's get into it. First, let's take a look at the weekly snapshot of the Washington, D.C. metro market.
Okay.
This incorporates counties from Frederick to Prince George's to Loudoun to, of course, Arlington, D.C., Alexandria, Falls Church, Fairfax. What jumps out at me first, new listings up almost 20% compared to a year ago. Now, that tells me that well, new listings are up 20%. But more interestingly, active listings are up 21%. And then, let's see, new purchase contracts are down by 7%. So if we can connect the dots there,
Yeah.
it means that there's more inventory and then there's less
Buying activity.
less buying activity. And, that probably has something to do with interest rates. And interestingly enough, showings are also rather low. So it's minus 2.8% compared to a year ago. I don't know if much can be made of showing activity this early in the year, but I'm pleasantly surprised with the amount of new inventory coming on the market, and then everyone's clamoring for inventory, so some of that inventory is staying on. Now, I am happy for that, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, there's a reason that it's staying on the market, and it's because some of these things are just not affordable for the buyer pool out there right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many factors that you have to look at. It could be unaffordability. The interest rates are still high. But the other thing, the first 3 weeks of January for us has been brutal as far as weather goes. And, we've seen a lot of school cancellations. What do school cancellations mean? Now your kids are at home. You can't go look at that house. You can't really concentrate on what you are going to do, move forward because things are changed. Or for me, like when it's cold like this, I don't even want to leave my house, right? People aren't going out to look at houses right now because it's brutally cold.
I mean, we're talking like teens cold.
Teens cold, yeah.
Teens cold.
And so I think that has something to do with it. It is still early. It's only the first 3 weeks of the year. We're still trying to, grab at straws to try to figure out what's going on. Okay, yeah, we're seeing more inventory. What does that mean? All right. Hopefully that means that we're going to have a little bit more choice and that we're not going to see crazy contracts. But I think it'll all even out as things warm up, as we kind of get a hold of not only that, we just had a new transition of a president, right? And so I think there were people pausing for that. So the people that were selling are still selling, right? They're still putting their property on the market, but there's buyers out there that are like, am I going to have a job? DEI hires in the government were just paused or sent somewhere else. So like there's a lot of people that could lose their jobs. So we're still trying to figure out this whole transition of presidency and the weather. And I think it's going to be a couple of weeks until it all shakes out. And then hopefully we're on a normal trajectory.
So this was for the week ending the 19th. And so we haven't yet seen the statistics for people that have listed their house intentionally after the inauguration, after MLK Day. And I think we'll see an even bigger jump for everyone that was kind of holding off, waiting for the, elections, the inauguration stuff to settle down. And then what you mentioned with the federal workforce is that Trump had issued the executive order that includes federal worker hiring freezes, return to office mandate for existing employees, and then elimination of DEI offices, positions, initiatives, and contracts. So some people have speculated, like us possibly, that the federal workforce changes could have a detrimental impact on the local housing market. Do you think it'll happen that quickly? Like in the next 6 months or so?
I mean, Trump is acting pretty quickly on a lot of these things he's signing off on. I don't know. I think there has been the pause because of this. I really believe that we're, as agents, I talked to a few agents and they were actually waiting till after inauguration to put properties on the market. So I think this week we'll actually probably see a bigger flood of inventory. Will the buyers be there to gobble these up? I don't know. We'll see. I mean, our area is a lot of, what would they say? 30% of the workforce is government related or government. And so that's a big chunk of the buyer pool. And, you know, with that uncertainty, you can understand why people are just like, all right, well, I'm just going to stay put for a little bit and figure this stuff out.
Well, have you had any trouble selling the listings that you had? You just had a listing in Clarendon.
Yeah, no. Actually, I put this listing on last Thursday. And, you know, typically I like to weigh what's happening in the market, and you look at your showings, you look at different things on how you're going to react. And honestly, I had an amazing contract on this the second day on the market. And my client was like, I think we should take it. And I was like, I think you should too. Because it was all cash, no contingencies, and above ask. And that's like in the condo market, Clarendon condo market, where you just don't know how things
Did you have any other buyers, any other contracts?
At that point, no.
So you had no other contracts.
And I had a couple future showings. But when you get a contract, and this is the tough thing, is that when, you know, we know this market pretty well. We know the condo market pretty well. We know January. But when you get the perfect buyer wants that property and they show you that they want it and they're going pretty hard on it, you have to weigh that. And the thing is, what I always tell my clients and tell other agents is like, I like to get through the weekend. All right. I like to have my client see how many showings we're going to get and be able to make an educated decision on the contracts that they receive on like Monday or Tuesday after we've done the open house and we've had all the showings. However, you have to understand that this is the seller's choice, right? That I can't push them to say, and it would be stupid for me to always push them to say, this is how we're going to do it, because everybody has got a different idea of what they want for that property. And so when I presented this to my client, I was like, hey, the agent's asking, would you take this property off the market? And if you would, what would be the dollar amount? And so, you know, my client was saying one thing and I was like, all right, I'm going to say something slightly different and whatever. And so we ended up getting a really great contract.
So they played choose your price. They asked you, hey, what price would it take? And then you went back to them and said, hey, if you can give us X, Y, and Z, we'll take it off the market.
Yep.
They played choose your price.
And we did it.
So I mean, that's like a dangerous game to play if you're the buyer's agent. I feel like I don't know if I would do that if I was the buyer's agent.
Yeah, I mean, that's the tough thing. It's like, but you don't know. You're running against the unknowns. And that's the when you're a buyer agent, you're trying to get your client in, you're going against the fear of the unknown of, is my buyer going to get it? Can I get this? How many people are looking at this? How active it's going to be? And then we, as the listing agents, see everything. And we're like, all right, well, am I going to get more showings? Am I going to get more contracts? And so you have to weigh, well, will it go above this if we actually get multiple contracts? I don't know. So what is that price point that we will take right now to say, all right, we're going to take it off the market and let the fear of the unknown go. Okay. And then, so that's what we did. And I think we got an amazing, I think everybody's happy. That's the great thing. The buyer got a great deal. They're happy with it. The seller is ecstatic about what he's getting. And in the end, everybody's happy. We're going to settlement.
Any other recent buyer or listing activity that you care to share?
I have another buyer under contract, single family home in Arlington at the 1.9-ish range. It was one of these ones that we felt was overpriced, and we got them under contract.
We talked about a little bit about it last week.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to bring up, if you don't mind, on this other deal. So we go under contract, and you know, buyer's agent, super nice person, great agent to work with. And we were under contract, and she's like, Shawn, I don't know that this is going to happen, but we're under contract, all cash, no contingencies. They do have a 3-day right of rescission based on the condo docs. Okay. And she calls me and she's like, Shawn, would you mind if we did finance instead of doing cash? And my answer was, I don't care what you do, just as long as you settle. Like, just because you're going to switch from cash to financing, I don't care. As long as you settle, you don't have any contingencies. I don't care how you get there. If you default, we're coming after you, right? So, like, the idea was, well, maybe he doesn't want to let go of all of his cash because he's getting advice from some other people. And like, all right, well, I don't have to give away my cash. I could take a loan out of. So that was the thing. And so my question to you would be like, how would you feel about that? What advice would you give to that person?
I might get a little ticked off.
Really?
That was my gut reaction. Is like, wait a second, you're going to change your financing terms. Like the reason that we accepted this offer, the reason we accepted your contract is because of the financing terms, is because you showed us a bank statement with $500,000 in cash that is ready to purchase this darn condo. And then you're gonna rug us. You're gonna pull this out from us. And so, oh wait, by the way, when can the appraiser get in there? We're actually gonna do financing. No, I would, maybe I'm acting emotionally. I would be upset. It's like, hey, what if you switched it to VA financing and there's an appraisal issue with the VA, or if it's FHA financing and there's stricter guidelines. So yeah, my response is, well, wait a second. Are you going to change the price too? Like, what else are you going to change in this
Well, let me
contract?
be clear. They're not changing it on the contract, right? So their cash deal is already ratified, and we're not changing anything in the contract. It's done. Zero contingencies. And I said, okay, well, I don't care. I don't care how you get there. I mean, you still have the cash. You have to close. You have to close. It doesn't matter. And what your contract says is you have to do cash. And if you get to settlement and your loan doesn't close, you're in default of the contract, right? So it really doesn't matter in that regard, in my opinion, what you do. If you're going to get there and they have the cash, right? So if they know that they can't get financing or something happens, they have to come up with the cash because they're locked in. We're not signing anything that says, oh, you can change it, right? And so that's where I was like, I don't really care. I mean, for me, I talked to my client about it, and he's like, I don't care how you get there, just get there, right? So I could see both ways in some regards, but
what if it was like a multiple offer scenario, and then you had like financing option and a cash option? You went
Again,
with the cash, and they turn out to be financing.
Again, it doesn't matter as long as they get there. If they get there on time, then they're good. If they don't, then we're going to hit you. We're going to hit you hard, right?
Okay.
So, the thing is, you probably go to settlement sometimes and the finance is completely different from what you saw in the contract, right? And there were agents back in the day or just a couple of years ago saying, they had a VA client and they were writing conventional just to get their contract accepted, and then they were switching to VA.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous thing to get into. But if the VA is going through and you just need that advantage, that edge, doesn't matter how you get there, you better get there. And if you can't get there VA and you wrote conventional, you're screwed, right? And so you better be knowing that you're getting that.
So I know you would never do this because you're an upstanding agent, but what's stopping other agents out there from always writing all cash and then changing to conventional?
I mean, they could, but they got to have proof of funds. That's the difference. If you don't have the proof of funds, then you can't write all cash. So we have to make sure that we have that proof of funds.
Shawn, there was another note in our sales contract that has started some conversation over on the Echo Title Nova Real Estate Talk Facebook group. Page 10, paragraph 30. How familiar are you with the merger clause? So the merger clause, Shawn, says that the provisions not satisfied at settlement will survive delivery of the deed and will not be merged therein. Now, in layman terms, that means all obligations and rights contained in the contract survive the settlement and closing, which means if the seller was obligated to remedy an HOA violation prior to closing, they are just as obligated to be financially responsible for the HOA violation after closing. It also means that if the seller is obligated to complete a home inspection, repair, contingency removal prior to closing, they are just as obligated to be financially responsible for the repair after closing. And then the buyer does not waive any rights to institute a claim against the seller by completing settlement.
This is amazing. Todd Condren, Echo Title. I mean, what a smart guy. And he always has great stuff on his Facebook page. Let me just read to you. This is what the actual paragraph says. And paragraph 30, you're at the end of the agreement. And it says, entire agreement in bold. And it says, buyer and seller should carefully read the contract and make sure the terms are accurately expressed their agreement. That's kind of the first thing. So that's the gist of the thing. But there's a really strong sentence in there. The provisions not satisfied at settlement will survive the delivery of the deed and will not be merged therein. Who knew that that's what that meant? That should be a line of its own. That should be in bold. That should say that if we go to settlement and you didn't finish those home inspection items that we agreed to, and we go to settlement, that doesn't mean that I've agreed that you cannot do them. It means that you have to do them regardless of if I sign this settlement statement, which is totally different than what probably most of us think.
If there was a quiz, I think 90% of people would say the exact opposite, right?
Absolutely.
They would say, once it's signed, hey, what's done is done.
Right. No, but this is saying the exact opposite of that, saying you signed this agreement, you signed this home inspection, or you didn't, you said that you have to, those HOA violations have to be done by the seller prior to closing, right? You've signed off on this, and then it's not done. You can still go after them. Now, how do you go after them? That's the tougher question. What force do you have? I mean, you have a contract. Do you hire lawyers to go after a problem that could cost $1,000, $500? Do you hire lawyers to do that? I don't know. And I think that's where the sticky part becomes. But man, that's such an important sentence. And it's just hidden there in the third to the last paragraph of a contract. I'm dumbfounded by it. And I think it should be in bold at least, right?
And most of the questions from agents revolved around, hey, how do we go after the seller? You know, what if they move out of town? They're hard to find. Todd Condren responded, said it's a lot easier than people think, you know, to obtain a default judgment and to file these things in the general district court. I don't think many agents want to spend their time doing that, but to have the threat of doing that is pretty significant. And then to also, you know, remind the listing agent or remind the seller, hey, just because, you know, you get your cash doesn't mean that I can't come back, you know, after you because you're not performing on the details of the contract.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that people could be sued for later, and that would be like you finish your basement or you do some stuff yourself, and then the place burns down. Like, you know, you sold a property that you didn't disclose, that you didn't really hire or get a permit or things like that. Like, it's scary stuff, right? So you got to be careful, and just saying, "Oh, I'm done and I have no recourse." There's no recourse against me. There is recourse, so watch yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that no matter how small, like, the HOA violation is, you should probably just take care of it anyways, because, you know, we read about these HOA violation stories where there's, like, a $25, you know, fee, like, late fee that compounds, and all of a sudden someone owes, like, thousands of dollars. You don't want that to be you, like, 5 years after you sell your house, right? Yeah. So better to take care of those things right away. Shawn, let's move on to our last topic. This comes to us from Florida, almost a retro of in or out, whether you're in or out on a house, Shawn. Let me introduce you to 1960 South Ocean Boulevard, priced, drumroll, $285 million, the most expensive house in the United States. It is not yet built. It will take 3 years to build, and it's coming to an island near you in Florida in 2028. Okay, so it's got 8 bedrooms, 9.5 bathrooms, almost 4 acres. It's oceanfront, this ocean to intercoastal masterpiece. So somehow they have ocean and intercoastal. Some of the amenities are wild. I mean, the 3D renderings are crazy in itself, as you would expect for a almost $300 million property. There is a car museum, Shawn, and in the rendering there's about 10 supercars.
Do the cars come with it?
You know, it's so interesting because it's not yet built, but it says it's going to come furnished. So it's like, all right, you got like 3 years to pick out your furniture. It's got a bowling alley, a paddle court, which to me should have been a pickleball court. It's neither here nor there. Maybe they can make some adjustments in the next 3 years. And a shooting range.
Wow.
An indoor shooting range. Shawn, do you think an indoor shooting range is like the next big, like, billionaire super house feature?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're onto something there.
In addition, state-of-the-art gym and spa, as you would imagine, movie theater, and a golf simulator. It's highlighted by a 3,700 square foot infinity edge pool overlooking the intercoastal, cascading waterfalls, tranquil lagoons. Wow. Renderings are cool. I want to see it come to life. Yeah. Do you think they're going to get almost $300 million for this piece of property? Which, by the way, I looked up how to say the city. It's right below Palm Beach.
Okay.
So that's where it's at.
How do you say the name of the city?
I already forgot. Manalapan.
Something like that.
I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Geez, this is so 4 acres. I think you bring up a good point about the gun range.
Yeah.
You think about Zuckerberg, and Zuckerberg was making like a safe house or like a bomb shelter. All these super rich people were like end of days kind of, he's becoming this masculine, doing karate, doing all this stuff. Now he's shooting guns, So Like maybe this is the next evolution of properties. You're going to have a shooting range in your property. This reminds me of, speaking of Donald Trump, Mar-a-Lago, right? Like Mar-a-Lago, I believe, has intercoastal and oceanfront. And that thing is worth a boatload of money. Who knows how much? There's been arguments about that, right, in the past. Like, oh, it's worth $18 million. Oh, it's worth $1 billion. So in comparison to that, I don't know how big that is, but this is kind of one of those things that you can't find anymore. 4 acres on the water in that location has got to be, land alone has got to be worth so much money. I don't know. Is it going to sell for 285? I doubt it. You know, that's always the tough thing, is getting, you know, somebody to pay $285 million, 3 years out. And we've seen these kind of things before where they start this price and then they end up selling for $100 and some million, which is still an extravagantly huge price tag. But 285, there's only a few people that can do it, would do it. I don't know. What do you think?
Listed by Nick Malinowski of Douglas Elliman, Delray Beach. Heard nothing but good things about Delray Beach. By the way, did you see it was snowing in Florida yesterday?
It's insane.
Crazy. Probably not going to be snowing in the east side of Florida. But it's got me thinking, like, does erosion take place in this part of Florida? Because
it's got to.
I know in, this is like completely tangential, but the Nantucket guy that bought the oceanfront home, which was worth like $4 million, he bought it for $200K just because everyone knew that the ocean was closing in, had to knock it down 6 months later. Now, he knew that it was going to have to, be knocked down. He didn't know if it was 6 months, a year, how much he could get out of him. He says he spent like some time with his family, and so to him that was priceless. But you don't hear about, you hear about some rising sea levels in Florida, but you don't really hear about Florida properties going underwater like you would Nantucket or the Outer Banks.
Yeah, I wonder why that is.
I don't know. I really had no end to that thought or
maybe it's wave structure. Maybe it's, you know what I mean? Because, if you look at the Florida Keys, if you've ever gone out into the Florida Keys, it's very calm. Now, on that side of Florida, there's waves. I mean, there's definitely waves, but I've definitely been in Miami where I'm like, wow, there's not really any waves, So maybe it's that. But I don't know. And the thing is, he had to tear that down. Like when you get to a certain point, the local government, I'm assuming, says, no, we have to take it down.
Right.
But $200,000 for a waterfront property, man, he still owns the land, right? It's pretty good. I mean, you could camp on it.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you could camp in a boat on it, in a couple months. But no, going back to the Florida house, listen, $285 million. I don't know how you run comps on something like this, but I love the privacy and the security aspect of it. I mean, I'm not an expert. I don't think it's going to get $285 million, but I mean, what's not to love about a property like this? I mean, it just looks so cool that we'll certainly follow along and update you along the way.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how this will actually go.
Let us know your thoughts. Is it going to get $285 million? Drop a number down below. Let's see if we can get some conversations about what this house is going to go for. Hit the thumbs up button if you haven't already. Subscribe. And for Shawn and myself, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care.